We'll open the meeting. We have an agenda. Let's see. First up, A, update from Harbor Master Mike Flanagan. Flanagan's office as to WQC, I would assume that's Water Quality Certificate. Yep.
Hi, Dennis Murphy.
Hello, hello. For the Army Corps of Engineers. So, Mike, take it away.
Okay. I have copies of the email string here between our consultant Alyssa Richard from GEI Consultants and Craig Martin from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we hand these out.
Yeah.
There still seems to be a little bit of a problem between Amy Honig from the Natural Heritage and
Hi.
Well, hello,
Hi,
Nancy.
Dennis.
Hello, we've opened the meeting already,
Okay.
and we are on A, which is the update
Hi, I
from
forget your name.
Chris.
Mike
Chris, great to
Flanagan.
see you again.
Yeah, I should be introducing, but I'm a little
Well, you should be at the table.
this colleague, as I should be today.
So, as everybody probably knows, we're having our consultant amend the conservation management permit so that the terrapin issue will be addressed in the federal project as well. Everything seemed to be going pretty well. It looked like we were close to getting the CMP amended. And I had Alyssa reach out to Craig, and as you can see, there was a little bit of back and forth there. Amy, Alyssa had spoken to Amy, and her big concern was whether the Army Corps has gone forward and got a MEPA review for their project. And as you can see, as in Craig's response, the feds have never had to do a MEPA review for any of their projects before, and you just can't really understand why now it's different. And I guess you'd have to read it unless you want me to go through it. And so Craig lays out his reasons for not having to get the MEPA review, and sent it off to Alyssa, who in turn got a hold of Amy again. And that's pretty much how it stands right now.
So really, we're no further ahead now than we were 6 months ago.
Well, I think we're a lot further ahead. It seems like they are starting to come together, trying to work together a little bit. And I thought I would have received something today from Alyssa, but I haven't received anything as of yet. And I told her we were having a meeting and I wanted an update on our permitting and that kind of thing.
My concern about getting set up with, well, we'll just say Charlie Baker, the governor, would be not having this in place.
Yeah.
Because it's DEP, which is Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I think it would be in our best interest to have this all squared away and agreed upon before we went up for our, hopefully, first and last meeting at the State House with this. So,
Mike, is Amy requesting review by MEPA something that she would normally do, or wouldn't that come from DEP if they wanted it?
Yes, she's just the turtle woman who now wants to show the federal government how important she is, I believe. And I don't think she's really looked into whether the Army Corps needs a MEPA review or not. But Amy is Well, Alyssa has been back and forth with Amy, and it seems like, you know, if Craig was right in his assumption, it should be ready to be signed off by Amy
Yeah.
any day now.
Yeah, I've heard it before.
Yeah.
I've heard that very thing before.
Do you remember the meeting, what was it, about 5 years ago when we had everybody in the room?
Yeah, when Mooney was sitting
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, and he offered to do the turtle study,
Yeah,
and Amy was still objecting to she wasn't here, but one of her representatives.
you know, would it be, and I'm gonna put this out there for everyone else to weigh in on. My first thought after hearing Amy's response and her conclusion as to having to have this done, I don't think it would be out of line for us to ask for the documentation that brings her to that decision. That could be sent in one day by way of fax, text, anything. We'd like to see the regulation that puts her in that position and the regulation from the Army Corps of Engineers that claims they don't need to abide by it. We'd like to see the paper.
And that's what Craig was doing. He was gonna reach out to the DEP, I believe.
But is he gonna reach out with that much specificity, like, hey, show us the regulation?
That's what we want.
As opposed to,
I believe he
Yeah.
will, yeah.
Well, I think we direct them to. We're paying the bills. Does that make sense? I know there's a certain,
I think so.
I think there's a certain measure of politics involved, and sometimes I can be a bit notorious for pushing things a little bit, maybe too much, but I think in this instance, we have every right.
Well, presumably there either is or is not a regulation.
And if there isn't,
Maybe there's a
then
conflict between them, but if so, let's sort out if there
that
even is a
shouldn't affect
regulation.
we put too much work and expense into this for somebody else to, as you say, looking to prove importance to a different entity. I'd like to see it on paper
Yeah.
with a regulation number on it.
Chris,
That
you've
should-
worked on dredging before. Have you done it in Massachusetts?
No,
or-
no.
Okay.
But it seems like, you know, Craig knows his facts. We're not required as a federal agency. He's pretty clear about it.
Yeah,
So it sounds like she might need to be brought up to date.
she might need to get that regulation down in this office so we can see it, because we're spending a lot of money on what I would say at this point is really nothing but hearsay from her office. She hasn't cited any regulations, any numbers or anything. And I think when you have a project of this size, it should be numbered. When she says something like that, she should cite it.
Yeah, especially if she's not gonna sign off on it.
Well, you know, it's a level of professionalism that I would think would be shown with a statement like that.
Maybe ask her at our public meetings that they hold.
Well, I would think we might want to work through Craig and
Yeah,
ask him
absolutely.
specifically, Craig, please go back to her and ask why, chapter
Yeah.
and verse, she thinks a review is required or even appropriate.
Well, Craig was gonna reach out to Mass DEP, the water quality permit writer, to see how he
Oh,
would
okay.
proceed, see if he could unwind it, as he says here.
But he's also saying, hold off on getting back to Amy
Yeah,
on anything NEPA related. So it sounds like the federal government would like to flex their muscles with the state.
I'd just like to see it done. You know, we get in the middle of a game here and we're the ones that suffer.
That's where we are
So,
already.
let's agree on having, and we are paying this entity to do that type of thing, but without putting you in a bad position, we want it ASAP. I mean, we really are up against it. We've got federal money, we have to get on the state very quickly to keep it in rhythm. And on small issues such as this, you know, if it's not resolved very, very quickly, it's gonna cost us dearly. Just emphasize the importance of getting this thing moving. Because we have been waiting for that water quality thing for, I think we can say years now.
And every time Craig has spoken up, and Ed O'Donnell before him, they've always been like, we've never had an issue like this getting a water quality certificate.
Yeah. So we'll turn
Mike,
up
do you
the
want
heat.
Alyssa to ask Amy for the documentation? Do you want to ask? Do you want me to ask? How do you want to do that with Amy?
I'd rather go through Alyssa.
Okay.
I think, and ask
Okay.
Alyssa if she could have Amy come up with the regulation or whatever it would be.
And I think when we do it, we should do it with a sense of urgency. You know, if you just ask if this could be done and there's no timeline or something like that.
Put a date on it.
Put a date on it.
And I'm playing catch up. Who is Alyssa? Who is she with?
She's with GEI Consultants.
Okay. got it.
They're doing all the permitting and,
Yep.
And this is the last bit, isn't it?
yeah.
It's the last.
The last step, yeah.
And do we have a list of any and all of the other permits that we keep up with it, just so we can track it, be it expiration dates or issue dates or?
I know that exists.
I don't think anything has really been permitted yet because of their lifespan. I believe it's, what, 5 years?
10.
What's that?
It's 10, with the exception of the disposal permits. They can't carry over
Right.
into a maintenance program either. That has to be done each time we want to.
But do we have, or should we start a list so that we can track which ones and the life and the shelf life on each of them? And I mean, I'd be glad to put a list together if I get some input from the others.
Should be able to get
play
that
catch
from,
up.
From Amy, yeah.
Yeah,
I
right
had
away.
asked her for it and I thought she'd have it to me by today, but,
Amy or Alyssa?
oh, Alyssa, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Too many A's.
okay, any more questions under A?
No. For myself, I keep thinking, okay, they're going to work, the earliest they'd work on the work plan would be in the fall of 2019. And I forget it's already May.
Yeah.
That's a few months away.
It is. And Dan, thank you for getting that through town meeting as a short notice.
I mean, it was resounding, the
Yeah.
support for it.
Yeah, thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring the vote of the ballot box to Charlie Baker too.
Yeah.
Okay, no more questions on A. We have our directive. We're going to, by way of the engineers, require regulation numbers for Amy's stance
And get a list of the permits.
and get a list of the permits with their expiration date. We did check into this not too long ago and they were all still good. And we were informed then, and I think it was surrounding the maintenance dredging thing, that we would have to be doing an update every time we did a cycle on preventive
Sure, okay.
maintenance. That's where that stopped. Okay, let's move to B. Discuss charge and committee side. So we will open it for comments from the table.
So Janet is the one who has brought this forward, and I sent her a text telling her we were starting. Janet is the one who brought this forward. She thought somebody else had applied to be on the committee, and she was thinking we really just wanted the size of the committee like it was. We didn't want alternates. So she wanted to change it so we just had 5 people on the committee. And I don't know what her thoughts were on the charge. So I suppose if anybody wants to look at the charge and tell us if they want it changed in some way or think it could be better worded, we could do that and bring it to the selectmen next Tuesday night at their meeting. But it was her thought to kind of bring this forward. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, does anyone have any questions what our charge is? I'm sure our charge must have certain bounds. We couldn't start deciding what the menu for the elementary school was going to be. We want to be restricted there. I'd be status quo. I think we've, at least I've come to understand what our charge is, and for anyone at the table that doesn't know, now's the time to ask or give your opinion on it. But I'd like to, given the fact no one seems to want to change our charge, I am in favor of the 5 members with the 2 alternatives, and my reasoning for favoring 5 is I think in this case, for us to achieve what we're charged with, we would be more streamlined with a smaller group. As soon as you start getting above 5, you can open it up to a lot of time that may be spent bringing new members up to date, and I know it sounds almost like a dictatorship, but the fact of the matter is with a smaller group you get more done quicker. And I found that out through my years of being associated with the town of Wellfleet. In some instances, larger committees are better. But we are in a little bit of a unique position here, and it all starts with the window of which we have to turn all of our efforts into a function, and that is from September to January. And we also have to try to get the train to leave the station. We have a measure of federal funding, and we are in hot pursuit of the state side of it, and once that is achieved, what do we have to do? Get placed on an agenda because the Army Corps is going to oversee the bidding process and all that business. So I'm all in favor of a group that can be quick on its feet and get going. But anyone that has an alternative idea, now's the time to mention it.
I have no proposed changes.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be an intense
Oh, it is.
process.
It is.
And we're going to need to be able to move quickly.
Yes,
when we need
are.
to be able to move.
Fleet of
and-
foot.
Yeah. And, you know, I always think about, you know, we've talked about buying a dredge.
Yeah.
We've talked about, you know, hiring somebody, and you've said before where they're 3 to 4 years booked in advance.
Solid.
And it's like, you know, we need to move as quickly as we can on
Yeah,
this.
yeah. We're really. I don't know that we've used the term yet, but I mean, we are in a crisis with that, considering shellfish, right off the bat. You don't have to
Yeah.
go any further. It's already smothering some stock,
Yeah.
and we're losing money annually with a boat ramp, which brings us to another point. Let me look quickly at this agenda and see when we can get into a free-for-all here.
Pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, you know, I think we've pretty much agreed on B. Unless anyone has something to add, I would be more than willing to listen to C as we move on. And when we get to planning for the future, we can really have at it with a lot of different things regarding things like dredges,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
One update I'll ask for from Will, and maybe it was tied in with what Mike sort of said, but had you talked to Amy, or did Alyssa talk to Amy about if they needed funding, you know, for turtle mitigation?
Additional.
Yeah.
Yes, they wanted a number, and that's when Will asked you what you
Yep.
thought,
Yep.
and what was it?
Because we had originally put aside 22,000, and I said, well, let's offer 10 again, and if we needed more, we could talk to the committee and see what we.
Alyssa got back, and she would, GEI would rather maybe see other avenues we could take as mitigation instead of cash, like
Okay.
maybe with the turtle sanctuaries or things like that. And
Okay.
they were gonna work on that and try to put that into the CMP. And
As long as they, and I'm usually very frugal, but as long as they can do that really quickly, that it doesn't hold up
Yeah,
that
that's
permit at all,
right.
you know, cash, I can just say, here, okay.
Yeah, at this point,
Situation resolved.
when you consider what we've got into it, what we've already done for work, and the consequences of not making a date, which we could, just over 2 weeks,
Yeah.
because somebody's on vacation somewhere else, it can get very frustrating. I would rather say, well, how much more do you want, for Christ's sakes? You know,
I don't
what
know
would
if you-
be an
Are you
additional?
familiar with that in some of your jobs that you've done, or, because what,
Well, the fact that time is of the essence, yes.
but I mean, we had to basically say to the Endangered Species Foundation, here, we'll put aside $22,000 for turtle studies.
To
and
mitigate their
mitigation.
concerns.
No, it's not at all uncommon to
Okay.
take that approach.
And now that we're looking at that, they're kind of saying, well, we want the same type of thing for the federal channel.
Yeah.
The federal government is saying, we're not doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're saying, if that's all we need to be able to get this permit done, we'll
Yes.
do, we're
It's-
willing to
it's
swallow it
short
and do
money.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
For the risk benefit, when you weigh it all out, it's short money to give them a check and move on.
So if Alyssa can make that happen, that'd be great, but time is of the essence, and
Yeah.
and if
Clearly.
it's gonna take too long for us to be able to set something aside, I was just thinking about there's a marshland that we're buying with that Hilta Trust, and we could say that marshland would be set aside for turtle mitigation.
So that's, I did ask Bob Prescott about that.
And that's an accountant from Michigan talking, so don't
No,
expect that I know
no,
what I'm
but
talking about.
he did say that he thought that it was a feeding area. He didn't know if it was a nesting area, but a feeding area is good. In fact, I think I have a direct quote that I can use from him. I solicited
Okay.
that. So let me get his Bob Prescott quote. And I send that to you to send to Alyssa?
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Anything else under updates? And just so we know, Nancy, you're gonna send Mike the direct quote from Bob Prescott.
About the Hilda Trust
Yeah.
area that we can add to the pot
Okay,
as a mitigation measure.
yeah. Who's our minutes person?
I'm doing that.
You're
I'm doing it, yeah.
Dan. Okay. Let's see. Let's move to D. Discussion of planning the future.
That's pretty
I-
open-ended, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. Let's try to, let's use this time for a chance for Chris to ask questions that he probably hasn't gotten an answer on, or well, we went through the updates. And then we will talk. But I've decided, I tend to get off the rails occasionally and talk over people and everything else, so I'm making an effort at this particular meeting to be just a little bit more balanced. So I'm gonna open it up to anyone that would like to talk about, we'll call it discussion of planning, but it can involve anything related to our project.
I had a couple of things. One was the permit and the permit list, which we've already covered. The other one is, do we need to start to draft a maintenance plan? You know, even if it's just bullet, that we're gonna stage it, we're gonna do it in series, we expect to complete a cycle over however many years, whatever that answer is. And ultimately, do we expect to draft the bulk of this maintenance plan, maintenance dredging plan ourselves, and/or with some help from GEI?
I think we would probably, and this ties into our trip to the state, I would like our preventive maintenance plan to be outlined, designed by the engineers. And a few months ago at one of our meetings, we were talking about exactly what you were bringing up. And we got to the point where we wanted to find out, the most important thing in our mind involving the preventive maintenance was an approximate cost per yard and how many yards we would be dealing with, within reason. There's no real exact number.
Sure.
You can only go with the information that we had. And we recognized we had to do that. Shortly thereafter, I got an email from Mike, who had found a letter
Right.
in his files. And that letter proved to be invaluable. And it will be invaluable when we get to the point of establishing our preventive maintenance function and costs. The most compelling thing that I learned from that letter were the annual siltation rates, which you have, I think
it's like 30,000 yards. It was
Roughly
12 for one. And
annually,
Yeah.
30,000 yards. And what you do is you tie that to an estimated cost per yard, and it will give you a foundation for the amount of money that we will be making our decisions on whether to buy, whether to hire, whether to do all these things that are tied into the function. And I did come up with a number since our last meeting. It is somewhat rough, and if anything, I probably was too conservative on the inflation rate or the escalation rate per year for the removal of 1 cubic yard. Going by the original draft that was done in, was it 2010? You just take the total that they require to move and divide that by the total cost, and you get a cost per cubic yard. It turned out at that time with those numbers to be roughly $55 a cubic yard for removal.
including disposal.
Including
Yeah, yeah,
disposal,
okay.
yes. I added a 2% per annum increase on that $55 a year up until this date. And it was brought to my attention that that may be a little low. And I would acknowledge that. But just for the reason of getting a quick handle on what type of money we would be talking about, let's go with $60 a yard at 30,000 cubic yards a year. And you'll get your answer of what the cost is. And I believe it's 1.8 million. And that could change somewhat dramatically because the cost of hiring that out is going to be more per cubic yard because they have to move the same size, same amount of machinery down here for a very short-term venture. So I think the numbers that I've come up with are probably just a whisker low, but what it does is give us a foundation to start talking about all the points that you just brought up. We can safely figure we're going to be spending close to $2 million a year at $60 per cubic yard if we could hire it out, if we could find someone every year to bid on that project because of the procurement rules. That has to be bid, and it would be...
Could you bid like a 5-year contract though, that way?
Well, you might be able to do that. Dan would know that better. He's a licensed procurement officer.
You could definitely do a 3-year contract, or you could even do a 1-year contract with 2 renewals. Past that, you might have to get special dispensation to be able to do that, unless you were doing it, say, through the county or something like that. So.
Once we complete the initial dredging, do we have to do annual dredging, or could we do it every other year?
No, you could do it every other year.
Save a load cost.
But we should probably have that pretty well framed
Right.
when we land at the State House.
Yes, yeah.
To have that, this is what it's going to be, we've got the funding guaranteed by the town meeting, they know the direction we were going, and at that point, you've got the ammunition that you need to give to Mr. Baker, or whoever he selects to administer it.
I would assume that other towns that do dredging, either on the Cape or in and around Kentucky or whatever, I would assume those costs are public record. We could validate the
Sure.
numbers that way.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Now, while we're on the subject, for at least the third time now, I am aware there has been new discussion amongst the Cape Cod Commission members about county dredging. And supposedly a couple of weeks ago at the meeting, Janet talked to Jack, I call him Eucalyptus because I can never remember his. He talked to Jack and someone else.
I pulled up her email. She talked with Ron Bergstrom, which I think
Yes.
he's the chair of the
Yes.
commission, of the
Yeah.
county
Yeah, he's the
commission,
county commissioner. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Jack Units.
Yeah. And their intent was to keep investigating whether the county wants to get another dredge. And it was said at that meeting that it would be one that could address Wellfleet's dredging issue, as well as Orleans. Orleans deals with the same type stuff. Not as often, not as much, but they do. And
At Rock Harbor?
at Rock Harbor.
Any other location in Orleans that,
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Is
But I
there
think
else
Barnstable, I think Barnstable has the same issue though.
Yeah, Barnstable May, they're a big
Yeah.
harbor.
Um,
So there could be some movement in that.
But do they all have the same window, September through January?
I think isn't that for winter flounder or something? So that might just be ours.
Which would make it a little more
Right
forgiving
whale.
in terms of scheduling
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah,
even
you know,
if
I
it-
don't know the answer to that question. That would be one to pursue.
Do you think winter flounder is Wellfleet unique?
I guess it depends
No.
on if it's been categorized as,
Truro as well, Rock Harbor. As
They
a
all
matter of
have-
fact, I think that's where the guy thought he saw the winter flounder one year. And that's why they started the restriction. Thought he saw it.
So if everybody has the same restriction, we're all
County
doing
dredging.
Well, I
that.
think
Yeah,
if
yeah.
everybody's using the sole designated dumping area in Massachusetts Bay, everyone's gonna be under the same restriction.
I don't think the towns on the south side would be using it though.
Well, no, they probably wouldn't.
but if we
But
don't get it
Barnstable
dredged
Harbor,
every
which
year,
is
and
mentioned,
we
is
like,
on
you know,
the
Orleans
basin.
one year and us the next.
And all their necks
Yeah.
and harbors.
Yeah, that's all the ocean. They have to go through the canal.
No, as a
And
matter of
this.
fact, I think you have to show the need
There.
before.
Even to do maintenance.
But even if we pursue the option of purchasing dredging equipment ourselves, we may find a home for it
Oh,
at
yeah.
these other towns in the off-season, particularly if the window of opportunity is different than our own.
Yeah, and even further.
Yeah.
They're moving these things up and down
Yeah.
the East Coast.
Sure.
I'd like to see our barges, if we ever had them, working in Baltimore or Charlotte, somewhere where it's warm and there's no ice. But at any rate, that's a ways to go. The other question I had about the county, when they made the statement that it would address Wellfleet's needs, do they have any idea how much cubic yardage they're talking? I mean, that is big stuff. You're talking a minimum of, well, if you've got an excavator in there, a 6-yard bucket, in a big lattice type clamshell, they use a 10-yard bucket. And then they still are in a rush in the windows that we have to move that kind of volume. So Janet had mentioned in that email that perhaps I should get a hold of Jack and extend to him some of the things that we're dealing with right now and see if they still think we could become part of the party. I'll do that next week. I'm too busy this week, but I will get a hold of them and see about that. So we're looking at, from the information that we paid for, and it appears to me to be as accurate as you can get, dealing with volume of sands in the tides, that we would be looking at roughly $2 million a year to move 30,000 yards of material. That comes into view when you figure the cost of creating a new department in town or in addition to your department or the DPW or however you chose to do it, full-time help.
That's on top of the initial dredging for the harbor too,
Yeah.
which is what,
Yeah.
400,000 yards.
400,000 yards right now, which was another point I wanted to bring up. is the 5 million that we were just awarded is off figures that are now 10 years old. And I think if they were to take it as it was, and Mike brought this up to me, there isn't enough money in there even to get to the boat ramp. So on a straight line, if we were to going per foot, we're not gonna go as far as we would have 10 years ago, of course.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another part of, I think it's the very next paragraph in the letter that I forwarded to you, when it talks about allowance of overdigs. And they allowed under the last contract, was it 40,000 cubic yards of overdig? I don't have the letter in front of me.
I don't know what that means.
There's a
What
foot
is over?
over dredge.
A foot
Go
over
to
dredge.
minus 6 feet below mean low
So they
water
end
with
up
a
going-
foot over dredge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, whether you could operate that a little differently and get it a little closer and use the overage figure to try to make up for some of the distance that we're not gonna get now for 5 million bucks is another story.
What's the official width of the channel?
Mike?
The federal is 100 feet.
Can we trade width for length?
I don't,
I mean, if we're up against the wall on quantity,
well, yeah, I suppose we could start in by number 13 rather than out at number 12, because I really don't think it's shallow out.
Of course, all this has to be approved by the Army Corps of Engineers.
sure.
Couldn't they start at the boat ramp and then however far they get is how far they get?
Usually they start on the outside and work their way in so that they can bring the scow, the barge, and
You
the
need
dredge.
X amount of feet to pull the barges.
Oh, true, yeah. It'd be working across purpose.
So you have to work your way in.
Yeah.
Do you know, anybody know from past experience, if the federal government comes in and they say, okay, we're gonna dredge the federal channel, do they stop when they run out of funds, or do they figure out a way to work it? Like, okay, we gotta do this project, whatever it takes to get this project done, or do they just say, okay, we got this far and that's all the money we have and we're done?
The contractor doesn't have the luxury of making that decision.
No.
It's the Army Corps of Engineers who keeps a yield record. In other words, at X amount of feet, so many feet is to be expected, and the contract would require the contractor to get to that point.
Okay.
But usually the Corps brings their own dredge in and their own crew
For what?
to dredge.
Their own?
Yeah.
They actually
Have a-
physically
have a
own it
dredge.
themselves?
Yeah.
I never knew that. I only
No.
was aware of Cashman coming in.
No, what's the name of it? The Karatuck or something?
I never knew that.
But that's not who dredged it years ago. Of course, it's been decades.
Yeah, oh, well, yeah. it was-
I remember Great Lakes Dredge and Dock did
Yeah,
one of the
that's
many,
Yeah,
many
they were
years
there
ago.
once. And then Cashman.
Cashman, and then Burnham was another one, because the last state job was a split project. Cashman did the big portion, I guess.
Yeah.
And Burnham, the original bidder, was,
It would surprise me if the Corps doesn't often sub it out just because they'd be equipment constrained. They wouldn't
Yeah.
have enough dredges of their own, I wouldn't think.
Well, who knows? But at any rate, what we're
and you know,
dealing,
this would be a small job for the
Yeah.
Corps.
yeah.
So, yeah, you're right, they'd probably sub it out.
Yeah, they explained to us how they were gonna do this. And it was, they were putting it out to bid. They were gonna take care of all the advertisement. They were gonna do the bid documents, the requirements.
And
And,
that's right, they did say all of that, because they needed the work plan to be done and released by a certain time early in
Yes.
the spring.
That's
So
right.
that it could go through all the procurement stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other key thing they did, that we will come to need at some point, was, it was Ed O'Donnell said that if we did indeed do our own maintenance dredging, and I think at that time we were even considering dredging the whole thing ourselves. He said that they would provide the engineering support that you needed for it, but they are very expensive. Yeah. So these are all things that will come into play rapidly if we can just get that certificate of water quality thing agreed upon, bought off, whatever it takes. And I use that term lightly, looking at that red light.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's compensation for for mitigation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But if the dredging doesn't, if the federal channel doesn't get to the boat ramp, like that is, you know, we have to have that for safety.
But I don't think the federal channel goes up to the
No,
boat ramp.
I think it's the
I think that's a
state.
different,
Yeah, that's
different
the
animal,
okay.
isn't it?
Yes.
So that would be under the state's contract.
Yeah.
Last time in March, I thought we had discussed, though, if we could add that in and pay for it ourselves.
Yes.
Now we have money appropriated.
Yes.
Or not appropriated, but approved for borrowing.
Yes.
And could we ask the, I guess
Corps.
it doesn't, yeah, could we ask the Corps to put it into their bid and then part of it gets paid by us?
Yes.
Just to make sure that that last tract gets
Yeah.
done.
And the other important thing that we should take advantage of at this time, sometimes there are openings where you can do some business and get things changed. I think we're ripe for taking the ceiling off of the launching rates. The state wants us to spend up $2 to $3 million a year in maintenance dredging. Why don't they take the ceiling off the ramp fees and let us increase it so we could be competitive with Truro and Rock Harbor and the rest of them?
Yeah,
That-
we mentioned that. We'll
Yeah.
see when we get there, but I think, Mike, what do you think of that? You mentioned that.
Oh,
didn't
we
you?
can
Yeah.
discuss it with
Yeah.
the public access people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
when
mean,
we're ready.
somewhere along the
Whoever
line,
they are.
people
Who
have to
wants to sit in the
realize.
booth with me while we ask for the money?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
come on, to go, isn't it $10 to launch a boat?
Yeah.
$10.
People complain about
I think
that.
they could do.
They complain about 5, they complain about 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It-
So then just make it 50 and make the complaints worth it. No, I'm only kidding. Okay. This is why we don't like recordings, right?
So
Yeah.
the other thing that I was wondering about, having to do with going back to maintenance dredging for a minute.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about $2 million a year maintenance dredging.
Yeah.
Which is obviously an extraordinary amount of money.
And that's a low figure, I think.
Right. And so one of the things that a lot of harbors have done, I mean, Wellfleet Harbor, one of the reasons I'm here is because I've always had this since I was a kid, working out in the flats and doing what I've done for quite a few years. Being out there and watching, the insultation of the harbor on a regular basis from every dune that rings it.
Yeah.
And so when we dig a big hole, we're going to be taking all this material out.
Mhm.
We're going to be putting it in the disposal site.
Mhm.
And what we are doing is we're creating additional instability along all of the erosion surfaces around the entire harbor.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Conservation Commission has had some interest in allowing the town in the past to take some material and replenish the beaches that are adjacent, so you're kind of like at least recirculating the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they're down south in South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, there are a number of locales that have done different kinds of either green infrastructuring or armoring or something that looks like a much bigger long-term solution, a sustainable solution to reduce the cost of maintenance dredging.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could include anything from rock revetment to oyster reef to a variety of different salt marsh replanting. But it seems to me, especially in light of the Herring River project, in light of the work that's being done on Mayo Creek, it would seem to me that we could come up, we may be able to get additional, part of the reason for bringing it up is I think we may be able to get grant funding for something like that. In other words, a solution that's not just simply digging a hole and, when it refills, we dig it out again. And so I know that's a lot of work, but this is an ongoing issue. It's not going to go away.
You think it's something we could work on after we've gotten by the let's get it dredged.
Yeah, that's the maintenance part.
Yeah.
But I think what's, it may also help us if we're talking about that sort of thing. It may help us with the NIPD's people, with the turtle folks. You know, if we're talking about habitat restoration
Yeah.
coupled with this.
Yeah,
You know, that gives us another, you know, leg up in terms of, you know, the mitigation aspect.
yeah,
So there may, I'm pretty sure that as part of a water quality project, the board that Christina now sits on, that's going to be administering 208 funding, water quality is part of that. So anything that we're doing, which also helps with maintenance dredging that improves water quality, can qualify. So there's another source of funding there. So I guess I would hate to see us go down a path of simply thinking only about, you know, digging the hole out every year or two. Because I just don't think that's sustainable. I don't think fiscally that's responsible. I think we can do other things.
the possibilities are there, I would agree with that. I wouldn't enter it into what we're trying to get done at this particular moment.
No, it's strictly the maintenance part.
Yeah, in which we have to get a handle on quickly. We're gonna go see the people in the State House, hopefully within 3 weeks, a month, and see if we can make some inroads into funding and getting a percentage agreed upon, which we haven't even got that far yet. We used to pay 25% and the state picked up 75% of the cost. And somewhere on this journey a few years ago, we were informed by a gentleman named Jay Ash that we'd be lucky to get 25%, which means we could be paying up to 80% of it. And then later, I can't remember who, but it was extended to me that perhaps we could do 50%. And we don't even have that nailed down yet. And what we kind of glossed over a little bit before you came in here was what we were going to realistically need to bring to the State House. And according to everything that was extended to us by Jay Ash, who's no longer there, we were going to need a real approved preventive maintenance program to qualify for any type of help from the state. So what we did and what we had come to, and it's fair for you to, or Janet to weigh in, we can back up quite easily, was to get all we could in line right now for the preventive maintenance side. And what I'm getting at is if we could just think about digging a hole and replacing one more time, and then hopefully we would be able to convince the state that our maintenance dredging program would be open to changes over the year for the benefit of everyone that lives on Massachusetts Bay. I'm sure that would go over. And we could extend that at the meeting at the State House. But I wouldn't want to tie it with anything that would involve more effort, more work, because we have to get this done in a very short amount of time.
We could treat that as a supplement to the plan.
A supplement
and
to
all
it.
the mitigating
Yeah.
options we could identify.
Yeah.
And
And we could explain to them that we would be making them aware of that. But what we do have now is funding for the old dig and fill thing that you're talking about. And
do you expect to have some sort of a outline of maintenance
Yes.
dredging in the next several weeks?
Yeah.
And if we're expecting GEI to do it,
I think
We
it would
better-
be important to
we
have
better
it
turn 'em loose on
professionally
it and tell
done,
'em.
to
I
be
have discussed
presented.
it with them already. As a matter of fact, I told them that we would like that to be one of their tasks. They gave me a list. I went seeking some of the tasks like the fuel tank, 3 Kendrick Ave, dredging, and the feasibility of the buying our own equipment.
Well, you told me the results of that.
Yeah, they didn't seem too much too thrilled about that, but
Well, they wouldn't be, because it would affect them in their pocketbook.
I did
think I
say
said that.
maybe we could change that task to going forward with maintenance dredging plan.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But it sounds to me like we need to give them a date within, say, 3 weeks that we need a draft. So something that, for show and tell at the State
Oh, yeah.
House.
as Dan said, it's coming up
Yeah.
very, very quickly.
And
Have
then,
you guys talked about the county at all?
Yes,
And you got my email
I
saying
did.
to call them, so they are still talking about it. And the meeting
Yes.
I came from with the commission just
Yeah.
said, county's working on dredging. But so I'm amazed that they have not reached out and said, what does Wellfleet need? Because I keep hearing, Wellfleet needs help too, but they haven't reached out to us. But did you get any, like,
No.
what kind of dredge, you need
I'm
to
going
put
to
your
approach
input.
them.
One of you guys needs to put your
yeah,
Jack Units or Ron Bergstrom.
yeah.
Cash-
They have to be aware of the magnitude of this
Yeah,
job.
they are. They just, I don't,
We
every
just have to
every
connect the
little
dots.
inlet
Yeah.
needs a different kind of dredge, so we've got to tell them, they want to know it. I don't know how bad they want to know what Wellfleet needs, but they said Wellfleet has a different thing, and we want to help Wellfleet.
We have
Yeah.
been paying for everybody else's harbor to be
Yeah.
dredged.
Yeah.
We
Ca-
pay our freight on the county dredge. We can't
Cashman
even
has a
use it.
second home in Chatham.
Yeah, they
You
do.
know that, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
So
Yeah, we talked about that this afternoon.
okay, good.
how does the county dispose of their material? Do they
Depends on
subcontract
what
that out?
it is. I don't.
Actually,
they don't really
I can
do
answer
it.
that
Oh, it's
pretty
hydraulic,
quickly.
you said.
It's
hydraulic.
sand.
Yeah, it's
They-
hydraulic, so
They
it's
haven't got
landfill.
into the black sludge. They're just doing sand and they're pumping it up
Yeah,
on the
okay.
beach.
Yeah.
The state, when we talked to Jay Ash, he was the chair of
Economic development.
economic development and housing. So he
Yeah.
was really looking at this from an economic development point of view. And he could see the state giving us, a matching grant of $7.5 million for this. But what he basically told us is, I don't want you coming back to us again in 15 years and asking for the same amount of money again.
Yeah.
You have to show how you're going to prevent that from happening again.
And we have.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I believe we should have our outline and frame for maintenance dredging done by the engineering people that have, gotten all the numbers together to come up with their conclusions for it, and advance that at the state level. We've done what you asked.
Yeah.
And they might, like you were saying, Mike, like, maybe they're gonna find that you don't need to do it annually, so it's not $2
Yeah, I was
million
wondering about
a
that
year.
too.
That's why you need a consultant to come in and evaluate
Yeah.
how things are gonna move, how the sand, how the.
The letter
Well, it's
that
gonna-
Mike had, and he emailed us a month or two ago, addressed that. Immediately after dredging, when you'd first start, and they even went on to explain how different elevations can catch more material that won't show up in the dredge perimeters,
Yeah.
is being deposited within the harbor at a lower elevation. And they addressed all of that as well and related that to what they call the cycle of preventive maintenance. Which can only really be, and they won't commit to anything until they extend their surveys through 2 dredging cycles. That's what they want before they'll come up with a number that they would certify.
And
The numbers they gave us were,
GEI or who?
yeah, well, it was board and engineering,
Board, yeah.
now it's a new initial that I can never remember. And don't try to, it's probably why I don't remember it, but at any rate.
So, Dan and
Yep.
Dennis, do you think it would be a good idea? So Sarah Peak is in contact with Jay Ash. She calls
Jay's no
him.
longer working for the state.
No, he's private.
You know who he works
making
for?
the big bucks
He
now.
works for my son.
All right, so this does.
He went into the private.
All right, so
Great
that-
connection, that no longer helps
Oh, the
us.
red lights on.
No, it does though, because what I was thinking is that you then, or Dan, could get his phone number, could talk to him and say, from your past perspective, what do you think we need to say to the governor, to the present Secretary of
Or his-
Economic Development?
or his
Like, what do we
designee.
need? what do we need to say to them to get it?
Yeah, we could do that, or we could do what we were told to do and don't
both.
invite any more issues. Sometimes when you ask, the answers you receive might not be what you're looking for.
All right, I'll leave it
I'd
up
like
to
to
you.
stick with what he said we had to do.
Okay.
Go up there and say, we've done it. Here are the results of the annual ballot.
And you're gonna meet with the new secretary at that meeting?
Yes.
Did it already
Yeah.
happen? It's not, hasn't
Hasn't
happened.
happened yet.
Okay, so that would be another conversation for you to have with him.
Jen and I have been keeping an eye out for meetings on the Cape that may have nothing to do with us, but the people that
Yeah.
are there, we want to
Yeah.
make a connection and go to that meeting.
That's smart.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just start making some
Networking.
connections and be
Yeah.
in front of them, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. This is the Wild West section of our meeting. Anything goes. Any questions? Any suggestions?
Well, I think one other thing that we could do is, in the way of consulting, maybe think seriously about looking for a consultant, whether it's, and I'm thinking like even the Provincetown Center, Center for
Coastal Studies?
because Mark has done an enormous amount of modeling on the harbor already. There's a
Yeah.
lot of baseline data.
We paid
80 grand.
80 grand. Yeah.
And so, he's got a lot of
And they asked for that
Right.
specifically in the letter that you
the
forwarded.
bathymetry data, which goes
What's it
back to what
called?
Mike was
Biometric?
saying. Bathymetry.
Bathymetry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a funny word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bathyrythmic. But
Atrial fibrillation.
their expertise isn't quite in that wheelhouse of trying to come up with something that would be more sustainable over the long run. They certainly have the baseline data, but his argument always, anytime you go listen to him speak, on coastal sand migration, is the same. It's like, if you anything you put up artificial is really not going to do much. Mother Nature is going to do its thing. But I do think that they have a lot of data, and if we were to look for specific consulting expertise in the area of green infrastructure, that we may be able to find people who are working on that. There's an awful lot going on in that field, and for relatively short money, I would think that type of study maybe at most $100,000 or something like that. But in the overall scheme of things, for relatively short money, we could come up with a more comprehensive plan for a sustainable Wellfleet Harbor maintenance dredging program. I just feel for every resident that lives on the shoreline in both directions, that when we dig out the hole and all the sand that's coming to fill it back up is coming from their beach nourishment program. Because that's where a lot of the material is going to come from.
But
and
the majority of our material is broken down vegetation, not sand.
And yeah, I was just going to add that too. And the other component is that decayed vegetation. Well, the decayed vegetation component comes from increased infiltration. So that means higher oyster populations, higher herring populations, higher filter feeder fish, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And there was one idea that was brought up, and this had to do with the nitrogen management issue, but some people were talking about the mowing of Phragmites, on Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So, the idea, to the extent that Phragmites, after it, dies, is removed, that means that vegetation doesn't end up in the harbor.
Turn into, yeah.
So, that's an idea that's certainly worth, pursuing and looking at.
Yeah.
Obviously, as the habitat changes over from more of a freshwater environment to a more saltwater environment, that's also going to cut down on the amount of vegetation. So it's a combination of a lot of these different things. But we have a historic opportunity, I think, to do something smart here.
Historic.
Well, it is, because everybody keeps doing the same
That's
thing
true.
over and over again, expecting a different result. And it's like, at $2 million a year, it's like, how long can you keep doing that?
So would, I'm
But
looking
in
for
all
the name.
fairness, It happens all over the,
No, that's what I mean.
Boston Harbor is,
It happens here in New England.
Yeah.
It doesn't-
Dredged
down
constantly.
south because of the amount of I think boat traffic, and for whatever other reason, I don't understand why our southern cousins have are way ahead of the game in terms of figuring this out. But I was amazed to be just down in Gulfport. My father-in-law has a boat that he's moored there for like 20 years down in Gulfport down just near St. Petersburg in Florida. And what they have, the whole entire harbor area is all rock revetment with tons of oysters. You can't pick them, and the water is clear as it's just unbelievably clear. So that filtration is keeping that healthy and keeping that resiltation from happening. But it's a combination of both the rock itself and then the other stuff that you're doing. So that's just one component. Then you go elsewhere where you have efforts to do, well, in Rhode Island, they've done a lot of salt marsh restoration work, to try to restabilize. But if we can't figure out how to restabilize our beaches and to reduce the amount of, infiltration that's coming from our decaying vegetation, it's just going to cost us more money.
oh, yeah. Yeah, no
So
question.
would GEI or Bourne Consulting be able to help with that, or do they only do bigger engineering projects?
No,
No, they
could-
do it all.
Yeah, so that could be part of their,
one
possibly.
thing that's important for us is a professional engineer's stamp
Yes, yeah.
on it.
Yeah, the one thing though that I've kind of seen is, we need a professional engineer stamp on the plan.
Other than GEI,
Well,
I would expect that they,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
what I
one
would
would
the thing
expect.
about GEI right now is they've done everything that's led us to this
Yeah.
point.
But
They've come up with all the flow rates, measurements, and
the one thing not to
and
interrupt
are we happy with that, I assume? I mean, are you arguing in favor of continuity or
I'm trying-
fresh eyes?
Yeah,
I
I'm
would
trying-
I like
argue-
fresh eyes, I do, but at the same time, I also
They
know
know this.
how much you can lose by switching
Yeah.
ships
Yeah.
in the middle of the voyage.
And I don't think we should. I think what we need to do is, I think my experience anyway is that the engineers, and whether it's anything engineering related, that's a different specialty than biology. And the
Yeah.
two, I've seen too many times, just don't even talk to each other, never mind meet.
Oh, yeah, I would agree
So
with that.
what we're talking about with creating more of a sustainable solution is looking to when you're talking about green infrastructure, for example, that's a living shoreline. That's stuff that is done elsewhere. When we were looking to get expertise for the wastewater program and look at alternatives, that expertise didn't come from the engineering firms like EPG. It came from other specialized consulting. But I think what we can do is, if we can find a good firm in that area, is have them work as a sub to GEI. Working with them, I think we can get a better alternative.
Has anybody ever looked into GEI? Like on their webpage or something?
They got all that stuff?
Yeah,
It's pretty impressive.
Okay.
I'd take a look at it.
Yeah,
they do a lot of the salt marsh
International.
restoration.
They work everywhere.
That's even better than.
Yeah,
yeah.
and they should know that. I mean, I would even expect them to add that to their consultation or something.
But it would just be as simple as trying to push them in the direction of a sustainable
Yeah, I agree with
harbor
that.
maintenance
Yeah.
plan.
I agree with that. I agree with it 100%. I think it's a great idea. But I think the mission in front of us right now is to dig the hole and fill
Oh,
it
yeah,
back
yeah,
in.
yeah.
I mean, we've
Yeah.
gotten,
There's no argument.
we just have to get it done. And
Yep.
if we introduce everything we've talked about, the process you're talking about would take 2-3 years.
It's going to take time.
And-
Yeah.
It's going to
Anyway,
take time.
and
What
now
could
we're
it be?
down to weeks.
So
All right.
what's our action plan going forward?
Oh, look at me, I came late.
No, I'm just,
Well, you know,
don't know.
the
Yes.
most important thing that we need to keep moving in the fastest route we can get to the State House
Yep.
is to get a conclusion for our water
water quality certificate.
water quality certification. And it sounds to me, for lack of a better term, we are in the middle of a pissing contest, and we shouldn't be.
If that's still happening,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You weren't here yet, but
Yeah.
it sounds kind of like Amy is kind of like just trying to show the federal government her importance, sort of.
Yeah. So what we've done is asked Mike, through the engineering firm, to request from this particular lady the regulation numbers that we can relate to prove her position.
Yeah,
No one's ever seen one.
all right, good idea.
Well, the
So,
other thing is, why is this coming up on our project and it's
because
not-
someone's looking for something a little more. We thought we were through all of this when we made our first deposit of, I can't even remember what it was.
20,000?
22.
22,000. Well, we
Yeah.
approved 22, but we didn't
Yeah.
spend it all.
No, we only put 20 aside, yeah.
Yeah. So the big issue was, now that the federal channel comes first, naturally, now they're coming back and again demanding answers for the turtle situation, which we thought we had mitigated by way of our contribution.
So do we
the study
think-
and the contribution, which was supposed to be
Yeah.
mitigation, and now it's like starting all over again?
Yes, it is.
So with Mike doing that,
Yes.
do you want me to reach out to Bob Prescott and talk to her, which he already has a year or so ago? Is that
Well,
a?
that would be the smart thing to do, just in case
Just
we
to
need
find
it.
out, because he was
I mean,
supposed to do it last year when we
Yeah,
were
we have
pushing to
nothing
get
to
it.
lose by having that
Yeah.
information with us.
Okay.
Our deadline right now, and the thing we should be focused on, is approaching the state to get a percentage of the money needed for this project.
Yeah,
And to make a long story short, we have followed Jay Ash's request, and it has been approved by town meeting vote. It's on record, and we've lived up to that sole request that they made of us at that time. That's why I don't want to introduce too much more in the
Yeah,
form
I hear
of
you.
questions, because they could give us a mission that could take months.
yeah.
And we really don't have the time for that now. I think we have to move ahead with what we were requested to do, and we did. And now put the ball in their court to come up with.
I probably
Janet,
wouldn't
okay.
wouldn't.
Okay,
The only reason I say that is because I think there's an appearance of a conflict there
With Prescott?
with the Mass Audubon Society.
I agree, 100%.
Because the first check
I wondered
that went
about
out
that. I wondered
Four
about
out of that 20,000 was to the Mass Audubon Society. So I think if he's negotiating on our behalf, there's probably an appearance of a conflict that,
well, so who can we,
But wait a minute, Nancy, you were gonna get a quote from Bob Prescott with respect to the turtle nesting.
Respect to the fact that the town is planning on buying the Hilton
Right,
Trust area
and whether or
as,
not that would
feeding
be-
habitat.
Okay.
and we,
I
at
have
this
it.
town meeting also, put into the Conservation Trust's hands, the Lieutenant Island salt marsh, which is also good for the
Turtle.
turtles.
Big
So I
turtle.
don't know if they, right, there's a
Yeah.
big piece of land there, and that was,
So the $2 million that we've paid for turtle habitat preservation is
Should
Not
be
enough.
enough to stop the salivation.
not enough.
Oh,
It
you
seems
mean
like that
with
would
Hilton?
exceed the 22,000.
with Hilton.
2 million. Yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
when you
but
put it all
it's-
together, it's an awful lot of town money that's going toward habitat
Yeah,
preservation.
and we're preserving the
So
salt
maybe
marshes
they would
along
look at
the
it a little
bay,
differently?
on the harbor.
I think that type of information on a sheet of Wellfleet stationery attached to anything else we have to show them as proof we've moved how could you lose
yeah.
In
submitting
addition
that?
to the $20,000 that has
Right.
already been paid, the
Yeah.
town, in the recent
Yeah,
town
meeting is
meeting.
We're
also
happy to do
authorized.
that, we just don't want it to take
that's right.
2 years
Well, we're ready to
set
raise
the
hell
land aside
overall.
and all of that. So, because Mike and Will have both been working with the Army Corps and with Alyssa to get that process moved forward. So if you guys have anything you need us to meet on or to talk to, contact Dennis or contact myself, and we can get going on that. I've got to go into Barnstable at some point and get my car serviced. I'm going to make a double, kill two birds with one stone, and go talk to Jack Units
Oh, yeah.
and just
Yeah.
Yeah,
start talking to
you
him.
know
Yeah.
everything up to this point.
And if we need to, we'll invite him to one of our meetings and
Yeah.
have him come to Wellfleet and
Yeah.
talk to us and
Yeah,
get on that page. So do we have anything else we want on an action plan right now? So
The thing that's still not tied down in my mind is who's gonna talk to Amy and get her to get off the dime.
Mike, through Mike,
Through PEI.
And we talked about that before you got here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
and the
Mike
need
is
to get
working
it
with
done
Alyssa at
quickly.
GEI
real quickly.
to contact Amy and try and satisfy what Endangered Species Program, what they need, so.
And you
But I
know what
also
may
think
sound coarse? We shouldn't ask them if they would.
Yeah.
You should tell them they have to. We're paying the bill.
Yeah.
And we're suffering the
Yeah.
problems
This was
of
supposed to be done.
having it on a back burner state,
Yeah,
and that's not right. And we wouldn't be doing our jobs.
Holding up federal funds, state funds.
Yeah,
Our harbor's dying.
Yeah.
She really needs to know that.
yeah.
Here's an idea. Could Barbara write the letter?
Who's Barbara?
Bresno? Basically make an estimation from the Hilda Trust and from the contribution to the conservation, what she thinks that's worth in increased turtle habitat. She's
This
an
is a little
expert.
different thing. We're swinging off of.
No, but I mean for Mike's purpose. I mean, if she puts together a letter that then you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
through
okay,
GEI
yep.
you can get to Amy and say,
Yeah.
look, here's our resident turtle expert, and here's how much habitat preservation she believes is accomplished by these things,
Mm-hmm.
and here's what she thinks in terms of either population or area, whatever she wants to say. But it's
I would do it in parallel.
Yeah.
I wouldn't wait
Yeah.
for this before you ask for the regulation.
no,
Yeah,
the regulation
Yeah, the
gotta get anyway,
regulations
but-
got some bite.
But also, you know, it just, I think seeing that she's going to have to say, oh,
Oh,
compared to the
shoot,
20
you
grand
guys
that
are
we
right.
got, yeah,
Yeah.
you guys are doing a pretty
It
good
could
job.
be a very,
It could be a very
graceful exit
easy,
for her.
very
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah,
yeah.
But Barbara is eminently qualified.
Yeah.
Um,
I can email her, ask her, call her.
And
let her know
that would
too.
just finally, this thing is,
Hopefully.
That's the only thing that we're missing.
I know, it's just, this
And
is
I would
crazy.
certainly love to have that before we land on the State House steps.
Yeah. Do you have a date for going up there?
You weren't here when we talked about it, but we have, I don't know the right way to say it, my son's very familiar and very good
Yes.
friends with Governor Baker's campaign manager, and he has broached the idea of setting up a meeting with the governor over this specific need
Okay.
in
But no
Wellfleet.
date, no date yet.
I didn't, they asked when, and I didn't want to commit because I didn't know if we would have everything we need for the meeting. It looks like we can, with a little bit of leverage on this Amy. It sounds like, maybe we
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to go up there armed for bear and say, well, no, we don't have that
They're
yet.
not ready
That just
yet,
takes
yeah.
all the
They
air
always
out
ask
of
if
the
you're
room.
shovel ready, and if we're not,
We want to
if
be
we can't
shoveled. We've
identify
done
it.
everything that you demanded. It cost us millions. We've got the
so
water
let's
certificate.
set the date, not for that meeting, but
Yeah.
for what Mike wants.
When we
and
get a
when
response.
when do we want the regulation by?
Well, I'd like to see it by the end of the week. Is that unreasonable? To get a
if
regulation?
a regulation
number?
exists, you should
They
be able
can,
to
they
just.
can just punch
I
buttons.
mean, if
on
she's
the-
already making that decision, she should already know what regulation
That's
that's
right.
causing her to make that decision.
That's
So,
right. She's basing it all on law, so there's a regulation that we should be able to see, so we can understand the predicament a little clearer.
And we have the MIPA review, right? Did
That's
anybody?
what we're talking about.
we talked about that earlier, that we
Okay.
can't, that there's nothing
That's
we
what Amy,
believe
yeah.
that,
Amy wants it from the feds so they can,
And the feds
To the
don't do
federal
it.
The feds do NEPA, we would have to do NEPA,
Okay.
but
we've done MAPA.
Of course, the big thing is we
Yeah.
hired the engineering firm to address all this stuff. It isn't up to us to
Yeah.
come up with what we have to do for the permitting.
Yeah.
We're paying the engineering firm to take care of that. That's their job.
Okay, and how about a date for the engineering firm to have
Yeah.
a first draft on the dredging plan?
For the maintenance dredging
Yes.
plan?
Yeah.
I would say no later than 2 weeks.
I was gonna say June 15th-ish,
Well,
middle or earlier.
that would be something we'd have to have a contract with them to
Yeah.
do,
To do what?
the maintenance dredging plan.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, right now, the water,
Quality, sir.
yeah,
Oh, no, but I thought you wanted to have a
I do.
draft.
I
So,
do.
so the
And
clock on that
That's
is
right.
normally within 3 weeks,
Absolutely.
2 to
So
3
it's-
weeks.
you're
So,
right.
so we were embarked on a June 15th date, but administratively, there's something we have to do to give them a task order or something?
pay for it.
Oh, that pesky detail.
I've already suggested interchanging one of the tasks that they've already agreed to do.
Yeah, you talked about
Oh,
putting
yeah.
it ahead of one of them.
Yeah, the feasibility study, I thought we could,
Just let me talk to Dan for a second. What type of room do we have to pay for the outline of a maintenance dredging plan without having to go to town meeting?
So town meeting each year gives me money for consulting. So depending on how much that would cost for a maintenance dredging plan, we could conceivably pay that. I haven't used that much of it this year. And it would just go to free cash at the end of the year. So if you can give me an idea of how much it would be, and then we'd have to determine whether it needs to go through procurement. If it's more than $10,000, we'd have to get 3 bids. But if you can find out from me an estimate of what it would cost,
And they're
then
gonna
I
ask,
can work on the funding.
they're gonna ask, well, how much detail do you want in this thing? We wanna go by the existing numbers that we've already paid for. And you have the letter. It was dated 17 something. At any rate, you've got it. You gave it to us. It's the one that has all the information of volume, rates, stuff like that. You could ask them to detail a plan. It doesn't have to be exact. Maybe it'd be better to be quite truthful and say we'd like to bring some sort of a professionally drafted maintenance plan to the State House when we meet. It doesn't,
I'd throw the word outline in there so they
Outline,
realize
yeah.
it's not down to the nth
Outline,
degree.
yeah.
and-
Yes.
But just shows our commitment that we
Yes.
are working on it.
yes.
Correct.
It's gonna
That's all we
help, be
need.
helpful.
Yeah. An outline. And how much it's gonna cost.
So Mike, you find out how much it will cost and I'll work on finding the funding for it.
Yeah.
What else do we need to do? We're working under the pressure point right now of trying to get everything that we need to start off our project. What else? I can't think of anything else.
Who's gonna be talking to Jack?
I'm gonna start out with it.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind with that is, they had also talked about potentially being able to use dredges from Plymouth for maintenance dredging,
Okay.
you know, as part of this effort to,
Who's talking about Barnstable County?
yeah,
Or,
Jack and
Oh, yeah, you
basically
can say
the county. Because I've been involved in a bunch of meetings with folks that have had.
So Plymouth
dredging.
has dredges themselves?
Yeah, Plymouth apparently has a dredge.
So who and how can we contact them to find out what they have, plus maybe find out what some of their recent dredging costs have been, so
Yeah.
that we can validate numbers? Is that, what would be the mechanism for contacting people there?
Do you know anybody there, Mike? Because otherwise I can just,
Harbor
The Plymouth
Masters.
Harbor Master, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can contact the town manager and just see what I can find out from them.
Yeah.
Just a
That might be
contact.
the best
Yeah,
thing.
okay, I'll work on that.
Okay.
So to sum this particular meeting up, I will, when will we be ready? Well, we gave a drop dead date of, was it June 15th? For the information we want?
Presumably for the draft, for the outline.
Yeah, for the outline. And the water
Quality.
quality
Sure.
certificate.
And who does that?
DEP does it?
DEP. They're the ones holding it up.
With the
So-
endangered species is the one holding it up, preventing
Looking for more
DEP from
funds.
giving
All
it.
right, okay. So I'm just reading these letters rather quickly.
Yeah.
It seems to me that they're as confused as we are about who's doing what. Am I reading this correctly? Like, you've got Bourne Consultants talking to Army Corps, talking to Amy, and that that all three parties are saying something kind of
Different.
different, right?
Yeah,
So who can we, I don't wanna use the term strong arm, cause I know, like, who can't GEI / Born Engineering consultants just say, this has to be done? Like, who's the person who could say this has to be done?
we, before you got here, we asked Mike to have,
Alyssa.
ask
Yeah.
Amy for referral to the regulation
so
that she's
that's-
stating her case on. It's the easiest, quickest way to find out if it's all bullshit.
So then we're gonna have to have somebody review the case to see if it's applicable. I'm just
Well,
wondering if
maybe,
there's somebody who can say,
maybe not,
come on,
maybe-
Amy, what's the story? Like, what,
We
let's
wanna
get
know
this
what the,
done.
what the regulation number is that she's basing her opinion on.
Cause this is saying that federal,
Feds say they don't need
they
it.
don't need it, so,
She says they do. We're asking for the regulation to prove the point.
and Amy is with whom? State.
Natural heritage.
National
She is
Heritage.
that,
Endangered
okay.
Yeah, and
species.
the odd thing is the National Heritage is not DEP. And
They're
it's-
unto themselves.
yeah, and the other thing that's a little strange is, you know, it's the federal channel's the federal channel. It's a maintenance
It's supposed to
activity.
supersede the
Yeah,
state, I
it's,
always thought, but at any rate, I
you know,
could be
it's
wrong.
kind of-
Yeah,
Maybe I
it's-
should
and it's
reach
also
out to
new.
Craig.
You know, this is like
yeah,
Craig
because
Martin.
somebody should just be able to say, you know,
Because
this.
Somebody's
Yeah,
gotta
these-
tell her
gone
that
on
she's
long
out
enough.
of
This has
line.
gone on long enough.
something's really weird. If
Yeah.
It is
you've been-
weird.
You've been looking at this for 2 years,
Yes.
and now you're bringing this up.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
they're
this
supposed to
doesn't
do
make
it in
any
the
sense.
fall, when we did all of our
Yeah.
letter writing and everything,
yeah,
that was supposed to be taken care of back then,
yeah.
a
That's-
year ago, so that's what I'm kinda asking, like,
Oh.
I think I will still contact Barbara Brennesol, but that ain't gonna cut it, she really needs somebody of authority saying,
Well, I think
what are
it's
you gonna
both.
do, and,
Here's the mitigation. Here's your requirements. You know, you don't have any reason to say no anymore.
right, so but someone's gotta say that to her, not just a letter, but someone has to really say that, like,
GEI.
yeah.
Yeah, I think a
Mike, when
request for
you're
the
talking
regulation. will do
to
it.
Alyssa or Amy, if you ever need me to drive up there to go have a face-to-face with Amy,
Yeah,
Dan will
you
do
should
it.
just do that,
Okay.
just holler.
you should just
Yeah.
show up,
You know what it is? It's time for people to realize heads could roll over this type
Yeah.
of performance.
yeah.
Well, what you just said, you've had 2 years to look at this.
Yeah,
The Army Corps can't believe this is being held up for all
Yeah.
this time, and
That's
now all of
right.
a sudden you bring out another thing and
Yeah.
say, oh, well, you need this?
Yeah,
are you suable?
And after we've already made a donation,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we have.
So this
I'd-
is,
I'd emphasize that as well.
yeah, we gotta find out,
They hold public meetings.
Yeah, well, you know,
Ask her in the public meeting.
I don't know.
Where
I'd
though?
like to see the
Yeah, it's
documentation of a
Western
regulation.
They hold them like.
And if
like
she
our
can't
selectmen's
provide
meetings.
it, don't listen to her.
Yeah,
She's
That's
gotta
simple
answer
as
her
that.
word.
yeah.
Just call her bluff.
I kind of like, here's a regulation, it
Yeah.
doesn't really require it, but to make you feel good,
Yeah,
here's this other, in addition to the
Yeah.
20 some odd thousand, there's also this land that we're acquiring and it will be a turtle
yeah,
habitat.
and she'll have a
Yeah.
smooth
And-
landing,
Yeah,
Yeah,
which what they're
Gives her
looking
an
for.
out.
At some point,
Yeah.
they say, how do I get out of this gracefully?
right.
Mm-hmm.
all right.
So I think we're set. The thing we should do now is set up another meeting, and that wouldn't be until we've obtained our objectives that we requested today. So I would say anytime after June 15th, but not later than the 1st of July.
and then if we get anything further that we need to meet sooner, we
Yeah,
can
will.
we
change
can
it,
always
so.
do that then.
We will. Is that okay with you, Chris?
Yeah, that's good.
You-
Kurt?
Sounds great.
Mike? Nancy? Janet? Tom?
All around.
How was your camera angle?
Beautiful. I had to push all aside.
Yeah, I see you. That looks
You
like
wanna
we
do
eventually beat
Tuesday,
you into
June
submission.
18th?
Beg your pardon?
Tuesday, June 18th?
Yeah.
Does that work for people?
Sure. Sure. And if we haven't made any of our deadlines on this, the meeting will be to draft a letter and ask why.
Yeah,
Same time?
works for me, so if it's 2
Tuesday.
o'clock's okay with
For
everybody.
you guys working, two's good?
It's my day off.
I was wondering, you never.
Oh,
come
that's
in
too
here.
bad. Would you like us to change it?
Change it.
Yeah, change
we
it
don't
to
have
Wednesday.
have it on Monday or Wednesday.
Why is he coming in on his day off?
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
How about Wednesday the 19th?
Yeah.
All right, that's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
At what time?
2 o'clock?
2.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll all have gotten what we need to move.
Mike, we will start avoiding Tuesdays.
Great. Until the winter. then.
Yeah. And I'll also ask, is Barbara Bransell, is she chair of the Conservation Commission and?
She's not chair, but
She's not
she's
chair,
on.
who's chair
She's on.
nowadays?
Chair is Lauren from the Park Service.
McKeon, all right, I'm gonna
McLean.
talk to her too, or get her to write a letter. McKean, yeah.
I will have my son extend to this gentleman that so far nothing, we don't want to be up at the State House before August 1st.
Well, not after, isn't August 1st where they take their recess? When they take
Oh,
their
God.
recess?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe
They
we could do it
recess for the
before.
whole month of August, I think,
Oh,
kind of,
all right. Well, then
yeah.
How come
June,
we don't do it?
July.
I was gonna suggest it next
I-
week, at least.
Because of things
I get
like
to
this,
take off. Yeah, yeah.
Well, then July.
We're not part of the,
July.
we're not part of EU.
Yeah.
I'll tell him in July we should be ready
Yes,
to schedule the meeting.
Yeah. And you could schedule the meeting down here if they want. Have a nice day off.
We could offer them a lunch overlooking the scene,
And one of the
second floor of the
things,
bookstore
I don't, yeah.
at low tide. Low tide.
So, I don't know
Yeah.
if you wrote Markey, but Senator Markey's coming to.
I did write it.
You what?
I did write it, but I haven't heard
Okay.
back from him. I'll follow
He's
up.
coming to like a town hall meeting on the Cape, kind of mid to lower Cape. And I thought too, we should invite him to come down and thank him for
Well,
getting our
allegedly,
federal.
Markey has done a good job
That's what I've
pushing
heard
us.
from a couple people, that he
Pushing for
really is
us.
responsible for us getting the money from the feds.
Yeah,
Or,
yes.
I'll follow up on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unusually
Yeah.
active. on our
Unusually
behalf.
active.
But,
And that was from our lobbyist? Is he the one that kept us?
lobbyist said
Yeah.
that, and both Sarah,
Ray.
Sarah Peaks
Ray.
and Julian
Yeah.
Sears said that he was responsible.
Mark
I
used to
think I
spend a little
talked
time in Wellfleet.
He did?
I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, yeah. You know, that's no way
Well,
to
at
leave.
least he knows
You
the
leave too
area.
much
He
room
knows-
for the imagination to pasture, so. to
No, he
speak.
has a soft spot in his
Yeah.
soft spot in his heart for Wellfleet,
Well,
Yeah.
he did.
and he really worked hard.
Yeah,
And I also think that it's that I was going to bring that up is we should reach out to the people that helped us, like
Well,
You know,
Sarah,
like him and-
Julian.
these people
let's
never
not
hear
forget the sign.
Your
We
sign.
can't forget the sign. That's
they
gotta
never they
go.
never hear the thank yous.
What's the
they only
sign?
hear the
Yeah, that's true.
You know, just to get people, Dennis's suggestion, just to get people to work a little bit hard. You know, almost maybe we need to have a mock-up of what the sign will look like when
Yes.
we're doing the dredging.
Yeah.
With thanks to Senator Markey
Yes,
and Governor
definitely.
Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito. You
Yeah.
know, just showing how we.
But you know, it garnered interest, which we hadn't gotten until we offered that. And then they started calling us back.
Yeah,
We didn't hear from them for years.
yeah, so how do we do that? How do we get a mock-up of that?
Well, the first thing you do is tell them there are two signs. One's for the people that helped and the other's for the people that didn't. Which one would you like to be on?
And if you didn't, you'll be near
Yeah.
the black mayonnaise.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun,
boy.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Excellent. I think we got some good marching orders here.
Well, I think we're on the right track. Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just keep pushing.
I would like to, I would like to have the shellfishing community that kind of participated in the letter writing campaign do a series of calls and thank yous.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering the timing of that makes sense. You know, is it going to be?
Well, probably the only thing we were really waiting for now to really start the thankfulness is the state to come up with their end of it, and we're on the very edge of obtaining that.
Yeah, so I think that would be a great, like, we have obtained all of our permits.
Everything's ready to go,
Yeah.
and the funding has been, we need the state to commit to a percentage, which they haven't done yet.
No.
We've got to clear that hurdle, but I'm pretty sure that
But I
could be
think
done.
before that is when you want to get some thanking done.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
Before
of the
you get the
feds,
state.
I think you're right, Nancy. I mean, I think if we reach out to the people that have been involved federally
we've got the
to thank them, because
goods.
that's gonna keep them that much more engaged to seeing
Yeah.
this thing through.
Yep.
Yes.
And keep pressure on the
Yeah.
state. Hey,
Yeah.
look, we're
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've done
we're
our
all
part
in.
now.
Yeah.
The town's in, we're in.
So as soon
Yeah.
as we get all the permits done and we
Yes, I say
know that
beginning of-
it's, then
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
when we'll do our thank you calling.
yes, yes.
And that would include Representative Peterson.
I got the whole list from
Yeah.
Ray.
Okay,
We
Oh.
didn't implement it because we were,
that's right, yeah.
other things came up but I have like a crier that I would dedicate just to saying thank you. It would go out to the commercials, but also to all the recs, because a lot of the rec shellfishermen wrote letters as well.
A lot
Yeah.
of people did, yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think we did like over 100 in
Any sense,
a week, 2 weeks.
any sensationalizing of our success with the feds through the media would very well be influential in the state house when
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah.
So,
Because they'll want the same accolades.
well, yeah, and it also puts the pressure on them not to be the poop of the party.
Maybe I'll try to work on, maybe you can help me on this sort of a public relations to get some
Yeah,
letters to the editor and
Yeah.
maybe a little article in the Cape Cod Times that we
Yeah.
can share with other people about federal government came through and now we're going to be looking to the state.
yeah.
Yeah.
maybe we've
Oh,
got
yeah.
to wait for the
It's
federal
leverage.
government to give us
And
the
you
check.
need all you
Yeah.
can get.
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
the-
that'd be
and
great,
schedule
Dan.
it, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That would
Let's
be great.
work on that together,
Yeah.
Nancy.
Who are our, it was Markey, it was Warren,
Let me see if I can-
and then the representative from.
Keating.
Keating,
Yeah.
Yeah.
those three. Have them all down to lunch at the
Well,
bookstore.
they should, yeah, I mean, they don't come, they're always invited, but, yeah,
At least invite them.
yeah.
Invite
The
them
other
to a
thing, too, is-
seafood dinner.
Yeah, and the other thing is, somebody just announced a challenge on the Democratic side to Markey. So he's got opposition, which is rare,
Oh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
get that.
just the other day.
Yeah. Well, we sold them
Yeah.
saying that there were
Markey,
1 million visitors
Warren.
that pass through the marina
Warren.
every summer. And
Not
their
so
name
much
could be right
Warren.
on top of
Yeah,
that
she-
list.
She's not really as much of our.
Oh, here are the phone
Yeah,
numbers,
okay.
Nancy. Here are the phone numbers. Marky Warren Keegan.
Okay,
So I'll forward this to you, Dan, so you have it
Okay.
too.
good.
Maybe you could make it into a
Oh, he did copy.
ribbon cutting ceremony for the federal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No.
No, really,
When we-
seriously.
when
Drape
get
something from the
that,
jetty to the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Get it on
When
videotape.
we,
Yeah, we could.
When we get this going, I'm more than happy to celebrate that kind of stuff.
oh, and I'm looking at it from a little bit, I don't know, different position. I'd like to put the pressure on the State House.
Yeah.
And that does,
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. We're a committee, we had a quorum. I don't think we voted to open, we never do. But we would entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second?
First and second, all in favor?
I'm not-
Well, you